So good afternoon, everyone. Big welcome to our expert panel. We've got some big heavy hitters today, and it's your chance to put them on the spot. We'll ask them some questions. But what we're going to be doing is getting their experience on how to build, buy, and then exit a business. So what we'd like to do, we've got quite a short period of time, so we'd like to obviously just touch on some of the areas, and then afterwards, if you'd like to get some more information to elaborate on some of these points, see these guys afterwards. First off, we have Gary Ashworth. Gary is the founder and executive chairman of the Interquest Group, founder of Abacus Recruitment, and also a fellow and past president of the Institute of Employment Consultants, a writer of the Streetwise column, and recently founded a new venture, Recruitment Capital Partners. Next we have Chris Ledbury, who provides funding and strategic support for startup recruitment businesses, ex-CEO of Exergo Group, and has been an entrepreneur and investor in UK recruitment and staffing businesses the last 20 years. Recently, Chris has founded Recruitment Capital Partners alongside Gary Ashworth. And then we have Graham Palfrey-Smith, in his own words, has a passionate approach to recruiting sector with over 30 years of recruitment industry experience. Is currently working as an NXD board advisor in the UK and the Americas, Asia and Africa, and spells with Badenoch & Clark, Harrison Willis, HW, TMP Worldwide, Rob Walters, 510 Group, and probably every other business that we've got here as well today. So welcome to our expert panel. I'm Steve Lewis. I was caught on the hop. I'm trying to be composed. I was outside, they said you're on, so I've come up here quite quickly to do this. I look after some of the larger recruitment businesses globally for LinkedIn, and what we wanted to do today was to have a discussion about what options are available if you have a business and you'd like to exit from it. So we want to be able to talk openly and have some good questions. These three know each other very well, so they'll be passing the ball to each other. I think what we'd like to do to start off with is, can you sell your business yourself? If we open that for Graham Palfrey-Smith, if you could kind of kick off with that.
Can you sell your business yourself?
Yes.
No.
Okay. And if you could elaborate a little bit.
Really bad call. We didn't choose the questions, by the way. That one's a really easy one to answer. You need good quality advisors, people that know what they're doing, that have done it before. Selling your business yourself, regardless of how well connected you are, unless you've done it 100 times before, I certainly wouldn't recommend it. Gary?
I agree completely with what Graham says, and also when you're selling your business, it takes a lot of time at a point in your business career where you're trying to optimize the earnings. You know, taking the founder or the top team of management away from the business may mean that the profits decline and you end up getting less for your business. So, you know, pick the right advisor and stick with them.
So you can be distracted. The opportunity cost of actually trying to sell means that you lose the momentum of the business you're selling in the first place sometimes.
Absolutely.
Can you cover off the options when you're looking to exit a business? It's not just selling, there's merging, that sort of thing. Perhaps, Chris, you'd like to kick off?
You could die. That's
also an option.
Quick one.
Be well insured.
Be well insured. There's only three ways you can do it. So you can do a management buyout, you can do a trade sale, or you can sell to private equity. We don't think that mergers really exist. We think that there's always a big boss, however friendly you are going into any deal, somebody ends up.
So no such thing as a merger of equals then, a meeting of the minds where you've got 50-50, everyone's got skin in the game and
not in recruitment.
No.
Not in recruitment.
I'm not sure there's much thing of a merger in any business really, especially in recruitment where the names tend to be different and the cultures tend to be so different. You know, it's very hard to put businesses together. I remember going to a completion party at Ernst & Young when they supposedly were merged with a consultancy company, and you knew it was going to end in tears when one side of the business arrived by taxi and the other side came on the bus.
So the culture fits the meeting of the mind there. There was a hurdle to start with, certainly.
And past the humour side, if you're going to lose control of your business, you really want to be taking cash off the table, I think, rather than merging in the hope that the combined entity will be worth more than the sum of its parts.
I see. So cash on the table, deal structures. Any advice that you can share in terms of what are those incentives to be put in place to make sure everybody's got continued investment in their minds and hearts as things move on. Chris, would you like to share to the room some of your thoughts around that?
The easiest thing to do is try and not be tied in for too long, because that may come back and bite you. There's a thing called indemnities and warranties, and this is where lawyers make a lot of money, and you often tend to lose. The easiest deal to do is somebody comes in, gives you some cash, no indemnities and warranties, says bye-bye, and you run away. But I don't think that that's ever going to happen to any of us. So I think the key thing is take as much money off the table as you can. Watch out for the price, because a lot of us go in with rose-tinted specs. Some bright spark comes in with a fantastic offer. We put all other potential acquirers to one side and follow the buck, because it's just inherent in what we do. And that doesn't change when you're selling a business. It might be better to take less money in terms of a multiple or full cash amount to get the majority up front. Whatever you leave in is what I would call at risk, and you're sharing that risk with your potential acquirers.
As a general rule, if you're going to do an earn-out, make sure the first tranche is sufficient, because there's no guarantee you're going to get any more, regardless of how well it's structured, or how well you think it's structured, or how well you think you control your business. Once you've sold your business, you don't control it anymore.
And how would you position that optimal first tranche to make sure you get what you need to start with?
Personally, I wouldn't recommend an earn-out unless it was very exceptional circumstances. I think the owner or the principal shareholder should take the money and go, and the remaining management should run the business suitably incentivised.
So is there a kind of a consensus here that the kind of exiting management should be leaving and exiting as quickly as possible to get on with the business at hand?
Ownership rather than management, I would think. Gary, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you sell your business, the idea is that you take a Samsonite suitcase full of cash away with you. And I think whether you're a buyer or a seller, you're not going to have the same step in your stride to come to work if you've been cashed out. So I think the security comes from the second-tier management, the people that are probably running the business quite well anyway, which is why businesses tend to have higher value if there's a quality second-tier management in place. So that's the first side. The whole kind of earn-out structure is a difficult one, because buyers are looking for continuity of earnings, especially if the majority of net fee income comes from permanent placements rather than the continuing revenue from contract work. So, often there's a kind of short earn-out period. If you do get involved in an earn-out period, you kind of need to ring-fence your costs, because you don't want any surprises or any external costs or management charges coming in to frighten you. And I would encourage buyers and sellers perhaps not to go for a year, more than a year. A year's enough. Absolutely. Really, for the buyer to make sure the earnings are still there, and for the seller to just do what they have to do before they hand the ship over to the new team.
Great. Chris, would you agree with that?
I would agree, and the last thing I would say is that take cash, not paper, because paper will have a perceived value today, but you can't spend it. The only time you've really made a sale is when you've got hard currency in your bank account. You can start writing checks for whatever it is you've dreamt of.
So what sort of incentives would you put in place for the second-tier management that are going to be running the business? Obviously, they've missed out on the first round, but personally, obviously you need to put some things in place that are going to continue there.
I don't think they would miss out on the first round. I think that one of the most important things you've got as an owner-manager, so let's say you're a solo owner-manager and you've got 100% of the share equity, you want to give your staff something, because they need to share the journey with you. They need to share some of the fruits of the reward and the success of the hard work and everything that they've done. If they can see an exit where they're not going to share in it, you're leaving it to the new guy to incentivise.
Yeah.
New guys will say why, and they will become a risk, and the business will be less valuable. The other thing, of course, is, why wouldn't you? Because it's not so much you that might walk away from a deal. If your team don't like the look of the deal or the look of the new acquirers, the deal won't happen. Won't happen.
So you need to get the buy-in of your team, as well as you sitting at the table exiting the business.
Be transparent, take them on the journey and share.
So how transparent would you be then? What would you be able to share, and what would you kind of want to position when you're speaking to your team? Obviously, you're selling the exit to your business that's going to carry on, as well as to the business that you're selling to.
Ideally, to the remaining management, you're selling the future, you're selling the potential for them.
Yeah.
They may not earn, they're not going to earn going to the beach money in the first round, so you're selling them the future, the potential. developing the business. But Chris, the last point that Chris made is absolutely critical. You have to get their buy-in one way or another. And if you're a purchaser, it's the same. You have to get the buy-in of the ongoing management, because if you don't, TMP bought a business once, not one that I bought, I hasten to add, before my time. And I was introduced to the senior partner of the search firm, which had 13 partners when they bought it. He was the last one there, less than 18 months in, and he was on gardening leave. So the entire residual economic value of that business, which they bought for £10 million, had gone. There was nothing left, because they hadn't done any work on those people at all. They just paid the top guy the money and assumed everyone would stay. It doesn't work like that.
You know, I think Graham's right, but if you want acquisitions to work, it sort of sticks in your throat a little bit, but sometimes you have to kind of buy businesses twice, really. You buy them once when you buy them, and people do value the things they own, so the second-tier management kind of want a bit of ownership. That's why people don't put their feet on the chairs at home, but you see them doing it on the train. So people value the things they own. So if you've bought a business and you want to keep the earnings, you kind of just have to re-incentivize the team every 2 or 3 years. It's just kind of how it is. And that, whilst that might stick in your throat a little bit, it's more palatable than the earnings disappearing. So I suspect you will find open ears, because the consequences are pretty dire of getting it wrong.
One of the LinkedIn values is to act like an owner, and that's shown through in our culture. So you'd say that obviously that's something that you would put in place with the culture of the business that you're actually passing along as well.
Act like an owner, fiddle the tax and take all the money.
I'm not that sort of owner.
Ah, very good.
I mean, if you're looking at trusted advisors, and LinkedIn obviously is a business which talks about connecting talent and opportunity at massive scale, but then actually does it with business relationships and connections, you're going to have to surround yourself with some pretty trusted advisors. But then would you also reach out to groups and to the wider realm? Would you stick with the trusted advisors that helped you with previous exits? Can we just look at how you surround yourself with decision support people in that relation?
That's an interesting one. The way that deals are done, and always have been done, is always to do one way or another with networking. So what LinkedIn and other social networks give us is far broader networks than we've had before. In terms of actually specifically exiting a recruitment business, there are elements of confidentiality, there are elements of client concern potentially. So going out to all your
crowdsourcing might be
1,000 LinkedIn connections or whatever, or 281,000 LinkedIn connections may not be the best idea, because you might find that all your assets walk out the door the following day. So I think in terms in raising finance, we've raised finance for 2 internet businesses I'm involved with 3 times the last 2 years, and most of the people we raise money from, the angels we raise money from, came to us through networking, some of whom through LinkedIn, and I just used my network and others and found a few people that we didn't or weren't aware of, or in one case had forgotten. Chap's just invested £500,000 this week in 2 of the businesses, and I hadn't seen him for about 4 years, but getting back in touch with him a few weeks later, he's signing a cheque, or a couple of cheques. So
that's a really great case study. So it's your business relationships, but having the ability to know what they're doing at the moment that's meant that's come back as an opportunity.
Exactly.
I think it's difficult when you're selling your business. It's quite difficult to get independent advice, because most of the people that you ask for advice will be rewarded if your business gets sold, in that they'll get a fee.
That's true. They've got an agenda, right?
Yes. So it's a bit like asking a hairdresser if you need a haircut.
Yeah.
You know, should I sell my recruitment business? And we've talked about due diligence a while ago. I think it's important to do due diligence on the people that are buying you too. How litigious are they? How many warranty claims have there been? How many deals went wrong?
Yes. Yeah, that's
reverse DD. Reference them. Reference your purchaser.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
I think the key thing, it's a bit like painting. We all like to see the glossy finish, but painting is only any good if the preparation's right. So talking about the LinkedIn or any other networking opportunities that you've got, the chances are you're only likely to sell a recruitment business once. And if you got it right, that'll be it. And you can sit on the beach or whatever it is, pursue other interests or whatever you want to do. So the key thing is preparation, and do take your time. You know, timing is critical in any sale, not just from an economic cycle perspective, but from your own state of preparedness.
Yes.
Are you ready? Do you have all your homework? So, you know, using a network like LinkedIn and some of the others, do your research, get your homework done, do a beauty parade, and spend a lot of time and look at all of the problems, because all of the problems that you're going to look for, you need to be as clean as you possibly can be. That'll reduce the dependency on indemnities and warranties, and it'll mean that you can get a cleaner deal and potentially more cash up front day one.
Great. So we often get asked in an interview, what's your greatest failing? And we don't want to talk about our failures and challenges, but it'll be interesting to share with the room some of the pitfalls to avoid when you are exiting a business. Graham, perhaps you could lead us off with some of the things that you shouldn't do.
Things to be aware of, things to avoid. Tax would be one. I'll expand on that in a second. Reading is another. Not avoiding tax, obviously, I'm not suggesting that. Advisors is very important. Exclusivity, the day job, not losing sight of that, and debt. Tax, get your tax sorted out early on. If you've got an idea of ever selling your business, then make sure you've got a tax advisor now, and get things in place. The last time you should be doing it is just before you do a deal. Read everything. You will see people, or you will meet people, or read stuff where it says you don't need to read contracts, just leave that to the lawyer. Read everything and understand it. If you're a business owner, you need to know what's being in a contract. There are organisations that will skin you, given the opportunity, and in recruitment and in other areas. So read everything. Don't give exclusivity. The first person comes along waving a big fat checkbook. Don't give exclusivity immediately. Get good advisors and assess the market. Don't lose sight of the day job. Gary said that earlier on. Absolutely critical. If you lose sight of your day job, then your business won't be there. And lastly, debt. You can't mortgage your company twice, or you shouldn't be able to. And Gary, I know you've got some quite firm views on that. People try to sell their business when they're effectively indebted.
The only one thing I'd add on to what Graham said is, don't tell your staff that you're selling the business until you've actually sold it. However close you are to selling it, there are some unscrupulous buyers who will use the fact that the deal's almost been announced, or the gossip wires of the jungle tom-toms have been banging away, and they'll use that to reduce the price at the last minute.
I see.
So, don't, until the actual ink's on the paper, don't announce it at all, but then plan the communication brilliantly. I mean, I guess the nitty-gritty of the people that are sitting here are kind of going to want to know, how do I maximize the value of my business? And there's a very famous book by Stephen Covey, and one of the chapters is Begin with the End in Mind. And I think so many of us are so busy running our businesses that we don't really think about the sort of multiple we might get when we sell it. So here are a few tips, and I'm sure the others have got some as well, to kind of get the most value for your business. Firstly, it seems to me in this stage, in this modern age, you've either got to be very big or you've got to be very niche. If you're very niche, you're likely to get a higher multiple, or if you're very big, you're likely to get a higher multiple if you're a Deco or you're Hayes. Stuck in the middle, not much fun to be, low margins, working other people's scraps of RPO work. So if you can move up the value chain, you'll get a higher multiple for your business. If your margins are higher, you'll get a higher multiple for your business. If the heart of your business is in contract rather than permanent placement, you'll get a higher value for your business. If your management team are private equity friendly, if they trust you, you'll get a higher value for your business. And if it's growing very quickly, you'll get a higher value for your business. So while you're working away in your business, you could be running a kind of perm-only generalist business and only get a 3 times EBIT multiple, or you could be working in a very special niche, high-value, high-margin area where you might get an 8 or a 9 times multiple, 3 times the price for the same earnings. So do begin with the end in mind. Some of you that are running your businesses are lifestyle businesses and just taking money out every year. Great, fantastic. If you want to do that and then close the doors when you die, fine. But most people, I think, have a 5 or 7 year plan to build their business up and sell them. So why not sell it for the higher end of that scale rather than the lower end of that scale?
Thank you very much, Gary. Can we pass along the line here? Perhaps, Chris, you can talk about some of the ways to maximise value.
Yeah, I mean, I think Gary's covered most of the points. So, top one or two in your particular sector or geographic area, whatever that might be. You've got to look at who might buy you and why they might buy you, why would they want to do it, what's the strategic thinking from a buyer's perspective. You need to look as good as they need you to be, because the audience will be minimising itself as you go round. I think part of the planning is to set yourself a target, not just a monetary target, but set yourself a timing target. There's nothing worse than coming to market or getting brokers to go and push your company name out to other potential acquirers to find that you get all the way down there and then you're a bit emotional about it because it's your baby and you're too attached to it. This is a capital return, it's a capital investment. You have to be tough. It's not your baby anymore, it's what's going to put you on a beach. If you set a stall out and you come to market, stick with it. If you try and come to market 2 or 3 times and run away, your value will go down no matter what's happening in the economy because people won't take you as a serious seller.
Thank you very much.
Aside from the ones Gary's mentioned, consistent recurring profitability, the people that want to buy you are not buying you for your history, although they might value it on that, they're buying you for the future. So where's the money going to come from in the future? They need to be able to see it. A good infrastructure I find is useful. One of the things that's come out very recently also is compliance. I did an MBO for a business in France earlier this year, and we were able to halve the price. I was, needless to say, on the buying side. Because half of the contractors, we were able to discount their GP entirely because they weren't actually legally allowed to work in France. So that's something to be aware of. Having a good infrastructure, as I mentioned, niche, absolutely critical. Selling a midstream business that's a specialist but not really a specialist, a generalist in several areas, it's not going to happen. I met somebody from Brisbane once who told me he had a specialist recruitment company in Brisbane, 50 consultants, absolutely amazing, for Brisbane, which is a tiny town. And he said, we operate in 26 areas. So they were specialists in 26 areas. There was absolutely no chance of him selling that business, and needless to say, they didn't. They are now a lot more specialised, and they will sell it at some stage.
Thank you to the three of you very much for giving such great high-value consultative advice to everyone in the audience here. I mean, I can see some people writing some notes down and paying attention. There's obviously some interested parties for a number of different reasons. So we're going to open this up to the floor for some questions. Your chance to ask some specifics or more general questions about exit strategies, but we'd like to encourage some people. I can see the microphone's just going over to the first one there. Please put your hand up and a microphone will come to you. If we can start off at the back of the room with Amy. If you could introduce yourself as well.
There's Jonathan Hall from Cranberry Panda. Everyone talks about sort of the 7-year cycle from starting to selling a business. Why 7 years so important?
Why 7 years?
Yeah, there seems to be
You can have that one.
Because there tends to be a recession every 7 years.
Exactly.
And you don't
7 to 10 years you have your recessionary cycle. So trying to get it in the middle of that cycle is good before it starts going down again. Is that fair enough? Yeah.
I mean, I think that's fair enough. Prices dip, earnings dip. It's miserable trying to sell a business in a recession. Nobody wants to buy declining earnings. You've got to be pretty brave to buy declining earnings.
There is market consolidation in a concession, though, where some of the players so obviously it depends what sort of appetite you've got, but it's certainly a consideration, the macroeconomic climates when you're doing that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. There's also the weariness of sellers.
Yeah.
This time round, since 2008, a lot more businesses have been sold than people who basically couldn't face another recession.
Really?
And I'd rather take 3 times now or 3.5 times now than the 5 times I might get in 2 years' time, because I don't want to go through this again.
So a wily
I've seen a few like that.
Very interesting. I think there was a question here.
Hi, Raymond Penny from Comanche. When in the next 3 years is going to be the right time to sell? And second question is, how would you value a company that's wholly dependent on LinkedIn?
Wholly dependent on LinkedIn, did you say, Raymond?
Yeah, for its database and candidate sourcing.
October 2016 is the best time to sell.
At 5:10.
You heard it here first.
How do you value a business that's solely dependent on LinkedIn? That depends on the buyer. Some buyers wouldn't touch it because it's too risky. Because LinkedIn could change their policies. I'm sure they won't, but they could. And so that would be a big risk factor. Other purchasers, especially if they're big users of LinkedIn themselves, much more sanguine about it, I would have thought.
Where if it becomes a full integrated CRM database, you've got some problems. But there isn't anybody yet that can sit and say, because I've got LinkedIn or BondAdapt or Bullhorn or any other thing, that they're worth more. However, what we do know is if any of us want to go and have a look at a business and there's guys sitting there with a Rolodex, we're going to kind of say, the IP is not safe and secure. So part of the value drivers is to make sure that your IT is safe. Because as we know, it walks out the door every day.
Let's just scratch under the surface a little bit and say the entire database is based on LinkedIn. Well, if you kind of scratch underneath LinkedIn and say, well, which bit of LinkedIn? Is it drawing people to your company page? Is it individual pages? Are you demonstrating that you are a trusted source of knowledge by the content you're pumping out into LinkedIn? Because LinkedIn's really just a kind of tool, isn't it, to access candidates and communicate messages. And I think if you can do that with content, and I don't mean by badging up other people's content, if you want to be in the high margin business, you have to know where the bodies are buried, the rare candidates are buried, and you tend to find those rare candidates with content. If you use LinkedIn to reach out, I hate that expression, to them anyway, that's probably okay. But if you can create fans of your candidates, it doesn't really matter whether you find them through LinkedIn or Adapt or Bullhorn, they'll come to you.
Or turn your candidates into fans, like the Orion example earlier on.
Indeed. Yes. Indeed. And I look after Orion and some of the other larger businesses on LinkedIn, and they certainly know that it's about the talent of their people and how they interact with the tool, which is obviously it's democratized the database. So certainly a Rolodex would flag some alarms about a business's ability to change and use the tools that are available to them now. Are there any further questions?
Hi, it's Marcus Graziano from Caspian One. Where do you view as being the sweet spot then between the contract-driven business and the permanent business? If you're trying to have a balanced kind of book, where does it sit in your mind?
My own view, and these guys may differ, is I think if you've got 2/3 of your net fee income in contract, you've got the security and maintainability of future earnings, and 1/3 in perm, which will give you the immediate profit hit. But other people may have a different view. There was a almost perm-only business sold recently for an 8x EBIT multiple, but it's specialised in a really sexy niche in the market. Consequently, it got the multiple it wanted.
It depends on the purchaser. When I was buying for 510, for example, I wanted the contract book to be covering all the costs, and the perm business, therefore, was profit on top. And if we could expand that, then we could make a lot more profit. Some purchasers, Venn Group, for example, when they were buying, they wouldn't buy anything other than contract businesses. They weren't interested in perm, and they actually discounted the perm GP when they were valuing businesses. So it really does depend on the purchaser. The example that Gary's talking about, investors have gone in and paid a very, very healthy multiple for a very, very specialised business, which is a genuine partner with one of the world's biggest IT companies. So, and they are the specialists. So there's no one going to come close to them. So worth a good valuation. But as Gary says, almost exclusively perm. So depends.
Excellent. We've got another question here.
Hi, Amanda Jemmett, IT Retail People. When you guys are looking at businesses, apart from the bottom line profit, what is it to you that says, right, this is going somewhere? What do you want to see? What's the sort of clinch point for you guys?
Great management.
Management
For the future, potential for the business.
Yeah.
As long as it's got all those other things, the niche, and it's got cash generation.
Growth as well. So if it's been maxed out and it's niche area.
No point in buying it at the very top.
So you want something that's evolving and it's got potential.
Yeah, specialist in, 2 cities in the world, which is specialist in that area, and there's another 5 or 6 cities you could go to, would be the perfect. I'm just quoting one of mine there, but that's
I think if you're maxed
not until
out,
October 2016. You can't buy that, Raymond.
What is it about October 2016?
he made that up.
It was Raymond winding me up in terms of where this specific date is, don't worry.
I think if you're maxed out in your local market or local geographic territory, whatever that might be, you're going to get more value if somebody can sit there and say they've got contacts outside, maybe internationally, and they can take that business forward. The one that these guys have been talking about have got just that, a footprint throughout an international territory. They're worth more money.
So you're talking geographically rather than sector-wise. I was thinking about sector-wise. Is it a good thing to look at somebody, so we work in retail IT, but should we look at another sector to move into or stick within that to grow our business?
Specialise.
Specialise.
Specialise. There are IT recruiters used to look at, they probably still do actually, we must go into finance. There are loads and loads of very good finance recruiters. Don't do that. Specialise in IT. Find a niche. Find the next big thing in IT and become the leaders in that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We've got a question down the front here. Thank you.
My name is Bart-Jan van Trommel from SourceIn. If you look at the financial motivation to sell your company, you could, for instance, say if I have a multiplier of 1, I could very well stay in the business and earn it in a year. If I have a multiplier of 9 or 10, that's great. In the meantime, I can build up maybe a new company or invest it, whatever the cash you get from your company. I have two questions. One, is this the right way to look at it? And two, in your view, what would be a multiplier in which you could be satisfied to take the cash and do something else or start another company with it?
How long is a piece of string? I mean, the one I've known people sell their businesses because they had to get the hell out of Dodge for one reason or another, and they'll take 1 times or less. People I've worked with buy businesses now for 0 cost, just legal fees, because the people can't run them anymore. They've run them into the ground. Bottom feeders, if you like, and not, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. And there are other people I know, some of the clients I work with, and they have a minimum, and that would equate at the moment to maybe a 10 or 12 times multiple to what they're earning currently. And they wouldn't go for less than that. So I think if you're a seller, have an amount that you know you will take out. Or if you're desperate, then take it and go. Because if you run your business into the ground, you might as well get the hell out.
Yeah, well, I was looking at the first circumstance where you have a good running company and it's part of the normal end game and not a disaster strategy.
I'd make 2 points, actually. The first point is, I don't think I can ever remember a better tax regime in Britain to sell businesses. Entrepreneurs relief, 10%. You know, it's never going to be that low again. It's only ever going to get higher. So we are in a window now of 10% tax, number one. But number two, we're also in an economy of very low interest rates. So if you sell your business for a multiple of your earnings, work it out, whatever it's going to be, what are you going to do then with the money? Because if you put it in the bank, you're not going to get very much for it. Yeah. My bank wrote to me the other day and said, on deposits of over £1 million, the interest rate they're paying is nil.
I got that letter too.
0. So actually, you know, for some people, it's better to keep their business alive. You know, instead of that 2 million of capital, they're better off having £300,000 or £400,000 a year flopping in, because you can't invest that £2 million very easily. Yeah. And if you do know a scheme where you can, please come and tell Graham and I and Chris about it.
Just aware of everyone's time, we've actually had more questions from the floor, which has been great. Everyone's going to be available now for coffees to walk up to and to ask questions from. But I can hear there's some coffees taking place for the next session. So thank you very much to our panellists here, and thank you for your questions.